I've heard this so many times about let's just sit down at the table, start a dialogue. And that's what Charlie Kirk was doing. Part of his mission, part of his purpose, part of his life story, who he was, and he was assassinated for it. I had planned on having episode 8 here of the Green Pants podcast as a continuation of episode 7, which was about external hate and toxicity, more so directed at me with the book and the movie, which I know to me, it's still shocking that someone like me to share my story would get that hate directed at me, evil, vile things. And then I'd wanted episode 8 to be a continuation of more so the internal, I guess, trauma, the self-hatred and no self-love and whatnot. So more of the internal types of things. But I even tried to tie that into current events, but I just couldn't do it. And for the past week, I've just been sick to my stomach. Last week changed everything. It changed the world. I was going to include, that toxicity and that hate for myself in regard to addiction, and addiction was going to be part of it, but none of that. I can't talk about any of that today. I just can't do it. But also, this is an opportunity for me, and I'm very nervous about it too, because I think a few episodes back, I'd shared with you that I'd even apologized for my faith in a few episodes. Almost like, oh, hey, I don't want to beat you over the head with my religion, blah, blah, blah. And I've thought so much about that, especially this past week. And I had a long talk with Teresa. We have lots of long talks, but I just couldn't get over the fact that I look back and I think 15 years, it's a 15-year apology tour before the book even came out. I challenge anyone to find a political or faith-based controversial post in social media that I've made. I made it, and I was pretty adamant about it myself. I didn't want to go there because, especially on social media, and now we can see how social media can influence. But I didn't want to do that just because no matter what, you can say the sky is blue and 50% of the people are not going to like it or like you. It's a lose-lose always. But this is my podcast. I want to share. I want to help people share love, compassion, empathy. But I guess I was scared. As a conservative and as a Christian, I guess I was scared. I admit it. What would people think? What would people think? And then I look at Charlie Kirk, and I should preface this by saying, if anybody wants to challenge or come out and respond or comment, that's fine. All that I ask you, though, is if you throw some comment up regarding a soundbite that this young man had said, for example, regarding empathy or 2A or whatever, DEI, if you're going to bring something like that up, bring the receipts. Don't just bring the one sentence. Bring the entire paragraph and the entire thought. Because that guy was a class act. Yeah, he sat down at the table. All he did was debate. He wanted the people that didn't agree with him to debate. And he was murdered for it. When a hero stumbles, the cowards rejoice. Nothing feels better for a coward than to watch a brave man fall. To me, that's just so prophetic and, of all places, from Dave Chappelle. I read that he'd said that. I'd heard him say that, actually. And it just kind of blew me away. So today, I'm just going to kind of reflect on this and share more so and lean more so into grace and hope and love and purpose. All coming from the assassination of Mr. Charlie Kirk. If Christianity is false, it is of no importance. And if true, of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important. That's a quote from C.S. Lewis that I've always found profound. This isn't like lukewarm. This is actually life and death. It's fire, it's rain. It's the heartbeat of purpose. And when I see a man like Charlie Kirk lay down his life, just unshaken, literally lay down his life, I know my own purpose and my faith needs to go deeper than I've ever let it go before. Unabashedly, boldly, and with the utmost sincerity. Purpose is not an accessory. I just think it's like oxygen. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that was something that kept rattling around my brain. You know, fire burns through excuses, through shame, through the labels that the world throws at Christians. I wrote this down, and I have it right now written. It's sitting on my desk, but grace blooms most brightly in the ruins of what hate tries to destroy. And I keep thinking and going back to that because it makes me think of my mother. I don't know why. But rain doesn't ask permission. It pours, it soaks, it softens hard ground. Grace is like rain. When people mocked me online with militant voices throughout the autism community and the broader culture in general, I could have hardened. But I feel like I was called. I do. I feel like I was called to pour the grace like rain. I could have lashed out. I really could have. And I wanted to. Believe me, I wanted to lash out. But I stepped back and I thought, you know, when someone tells you who they are, number one, believe them. And then number two, take a breath before you respond. Because you don't know them. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know what's happening. But in the world we're living in right now today, though, too many people do lash out and too many people do seek vengeance because what we've seen happen, and I think it happens a lot for Christians and conservatives, is that there's a dehumanization going on, as if to make them less than human. How in the world could you be that? X, Y, and Z. There must be something wrong with you. But at the same time, hate dehumanizes. Grace restores humanity, revitalizes, renews. But look at what happened to Charlie Kirk. And he was one of the good guys. People mocked him, cheered on his death, stomped figuratively and literally on his grave. The crazy thing is that Charlie Kirk, he would forgive them all. That's a true sign of empathy, but the words he would rather use would be compassion and sympathy. This is what politicians have done. Just dehumanization. I don't care if it's left or right. I'm not even going to get into that. For so many years, especially towards Christians and conservatives. And I'll tell you that this past week, I've just been sick to my stomach. Tell Teresa, you can ask her, I just can't let go. I just can't stop thinking about what happened to him. But the thing that is just, it's so ominous and evil. I mean, you can just cut it with a knife. It's so thick. And there's a few things I want to share with you and read. This first one, though, let me read this. I had to print it out because wasn't going to memorize this. It's been 4 days since the public execution of Charlie Kirk, and my feelings have not subsided. They've only gotten more intense. The extreme sadness, the rage, the sick-gutted emptiness. Then the realization comes. The realization of what his death has exposed. And I should say that these words here are exactly what I was feeling in trying to share with Teresa. And then I saw these words that someone had written, and I'm like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Continuing. Then the realization comes, the realization of what his death has exposed. Never in the history of life has it been so easy to see who is good and who is evil. It's given me extreme clarity. There is no gray anymore. To all the people dancing on the corpse of a man who is publicly slaughtered, assassinated in front of his family for the whole world to see, just know that we see you vividly. It's Jamie Kennedy, who's a comedian and actor, and I saw that, and it just shocked me. But it was exactly, those are the exact feelings I have. And in talking with Teresa, I just said, I can't believe it. I can't believe it, because we're watching actual evil right in front of us. Not just this metaphorical, oh, there's evil in the world, there's even in the world. No, there are people on parade in front of us. Doctors, teachers, regular people. Their actions are just plain demonic. Prove me wrong, please. Christians and conservatives are labeled. This 15-year apology tour that I kind of kid about, which is me, and about that same amount of time too. For me, in my mind, I look back and I think that's about how long Christians and conservatives it's really just boiled up to where they're labeled Nazis, bigots, homophobes, racists, bitter clingers, deplorables. All these labels are designed to crush dreams, silence voices, and burn down hope, and more. I read this, as everybody, and I have to tell you, over the last week, the one thing that I did, I just occasionally would look over at T, and I'd just say, I got to put my phone down. I would just scroll, go, and just, even the positive posts, I'm like, I can't look at this. I can't see this. And I just can't believe that someone was so touched in the brain, in the soul, that they decided to silence a young... Charlie Kirk is Austin and Logan's age. Someone shot him in the face because they didn't like what he said and didn't like what he stood for. But there's a Rutgers study, and this should shake you to the core. There's a Rutgers study that came out within the last year, I believe, and it says the assassination culture is spreading on the left. Okay, I apologize. I did say the left there, but this is about self-identified liberals, where 48% said that we'd have no problem at all at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. In that same subset, the self-identified liberals, 55% said the same about Donald Trump. That was actually earlier this year in April. Now, I've done a lot of research and looking at these types of things, and so much has been clarified for me, because for so many months, if not years, I've sat and kept these things to myself, and in my mind thought, this is what this is, but I never shared it, maybe with Teresa, but I finally put a name to it, because there are folks that look at Christians and conservatives that you've heard this, I'm sure many may have heard this, where politicians, and there's equal bad ones to go around, but politicians, specifically looking at conservatives and Christians, get in their face if they're at a restaurant, make them feel uncomfortable. You know, we got to take him out. We got to do this. We got to do that. And there's a word for it now. All these things, these mocking, calling Nazis and racists and all these different words, bitter clingers and basket of deplorables. It's called stochastic terrorism. It is terrorism. What that punk did in Utah was a terroristic act, premeditated. Don't kid anybody. We know what happened and why. But stochastic terrorism, the definition is the public demonization of a person, group, or idea through rhetoric that is vague enough to provide plausible deniability, yet emotionally charged enough that statistically some unstable listener may commit violence. Here's how it works. Use loaded language like enemies, traitors, invaders, without directly saying attack them. Frame the target as dangerous or evil, leaving the audience to fill in the blank about what should be done. The speaker can later deny intent, saying, I never told anyone to do that. Are we there? Are we there? I don't want to just keep giving examples, but this is the last point, because this is the hardest one to say, because sadly, it's not a one-off. That's what is sick about this whole thing. You might hear one crazy person say something really wild, and you're like, oh, that's just someone way out there on the edge. No, this is the norm this past week. But this is from someone on Blue Sky, which I've come to learn now that Blue Sky has really turned into this something. But there are pages on there, and I'm smart enough to know that there's wackos on the right and left. I know that. But anyway, this came from Blue Sky, but there are pages on there with who's next, what conservative is next. And it's just a cesspool of sickness. But this particular person on Blue Sky said, can Erica Kirk be next? Then the two children can be placed with foster parents who will have them properly educated and growing up hating their parents. F. Charlie Kirk. F. Erica Kirk. And I'm not even going to share with you how many thumbs up she got. Faith, though, it's not about avoiding the flames. It's about walking straight into the fire. You know, from having your back turned on evil to turning around and directing and knowing that you want to walk straight into it. For me, my purpose is I've got to embrace it all. The evil, the hatred, the lies, because my God is bigger, my grace is stronger. No more apologies. I think I need to get uncomfortable with my faith, because my God is a righteous God and a loving God, all loving. When I do this, when I embrace the bad alongside the good and take it head on, I think that's where I can and will make change and find real, what the heck? Something fell. Make real change and, find my real purpose. The legacy of Charlie Kirk. When I look at Charlie Kirk, though, I don't see just a man. I see this flame, this raging flame. He was hilarious. He was brilliant, a brilliant dude. If you ever watched and not just took sound bites, but actually listened to him during his debates, the guy was just brilliant, encyclopedic, and would be the first one to admit when he was wrong. He burned with conviction. He planted so many seeds. Those seeds, though, his seeds were so many different movements and ministries and these campus crusades, or whatever you want to call them, just inspiring courage in young viewers. But I think what we're seeing now, though, that in his death, those seeds are just exploding and breaking open. And I do think that his death has stirred a nation. It has. I think this is not just some assassination. And any shooting, this isn't a gun violence thing. It's a heart and mind and soul. It's just evil. But it's a tipping point. It's not a collapse of faith. It's not the end of a movement, but I think it's the beginning of a much greater plan. If a purpose is made to burn like fire, I think we have to step up and be the ones to carry that flame. To pour like rain, to turn toward God is the true purpose. I wrote some notes here I want to finish with. I want to do this, finding my true purpose, fully and apologetically, even when it gets uncomfortable. I think that's the time to speak louder. Dreams often die. They're crushed by addiction, by hatred, by shame, by envy, by greed. But death isn't the end. Crushed dreams create fertile ground for hope and renewal. But death isn't the end. See, for me, my rock bottom moment, it gave way to so many things. It took that. It could have been worse. Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. It's John 12:24. You see, there's no time to be moderately faithful. Burn with purpose, pour with grace, even when it hurts. And one last thing, there's my favorite poem. It's by an author, a famous author called Khalil Gibran, and I believe he's Indian. I believe he's Indian. He's the third most popular poet in the world, behind Shakespeare and Sun Lao or Sun Tzu. Anyway, it's from a collection called The Crucible, and this particular part is called On Joy and Sorrow. I'm just going to read a couple of sentences. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. It's my favorite poem, and my takeaway from that is that, and it got rocked this past week, but my takeaway is the deeper the hole, the in your heart, the more trauma, the more pain just means that much more joy that you've got to possibly get in there. And that's good. But it made me think, are there souls in our world that have too much pain, have too big of a hole in that heart to where it's just ripped asunder, and it's not fixable, it's not redeemable, it's not renewable? I don't know. But all we can do is embrace them, because I absolutely believe, like Charlie Kirk, for these people, even the ones today that are stomping on his grave and rejoicing over his assassination, I absolutely believe that he would do the Christ-like thing and forgive them. I wrote this. Spent a lot of time, and I wanted to close with this. Burn like fire, pour like rain, because faith that costs nothing means nothing, and grace that withholds itself heals no one. God bless.